to the final show of 2021 for Backyard Farmer. We are coming to you from our absolutely gorgeous garden on a beautiful day. We are so glad to be in your homes again. And this is a taped show, so unfortunately we cannot take your calls tonight. We are ending the season, so those emails might take a little time to answer as well. But of course, you can watch us and find all of our good information off-season on Facebook. You can follow us on our Facebook page, and you can see all those old shows and all those old fun clips. As always, we start with samples, and Kyle, you have a stick in a box.
Yep, I've got 2 sticks and a stick mimic. So this is a mantis. It's that time of year, end of summer, when we're starting to see the adults out. And this particular one is a male Carolina mantis. So this is one of our native species, certainly the most common native species that we have here. And really we have 2 pretty common species here in eastern Nebraska, the Carolina mantis and then the Chinese mantis. The Carolina mantis native, Chinese is introduced. In western Nebraska, there's a 3rd species that's fairly common, the European mantis. So for Carolina mantis, the male is generally kind of a brown with the green legs. There is a fair bit of variation in color, a few inches long. The females have a really fat abdomen, and so that's sort of one way you can differentiate them. So these are really great guys to have around the landscape. You're going to see them now. They're very good predators. The one downside is they don't really discriminate, so they will also, they'll basically eat anything they can catch, so you might find them also eating some pollinators. But otherwise, we're going to see a lot of these now around the landscape and start seeing those eggs, or ootheca too. Those are the kind of papery substances that you'll see glued to a variety of substrates. So if you do see those, I just recommend leaving those in your garden so that you'll have more of these around next year.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. That is not a creature, Dennis.
No, but it's evidence of 2 creatures, and I actually picked this up under an oak tree here on campus, and it has 2 things, and I've been getting a lot of calls on. So when you see brown up in the tree, and I took this from up in the tree, it's not squirrels. That is probably, in this case, it's the oak, so it's an oak twig girdler, and once it falls, it would be hollow on the end. Okay, and it looks like it's been cut in a circle. Now you also are going to see this time of year a lot of green that may turn brown twigs on the ground. Those are already on the ground. And these are going to be on an angle. These are from squirrels. Squirrels now are starting to cut and gather their twigs to make their home. Squirrels like trees better than you like the tree. Okay? So the squirrels are not going to hurt the tree. Don't sweat it. Just let it be. Okay? You got to remember, for a squirrel to hurt a tree, it'd be like you to burn your house down and get rid of your garden. It's their food and house. So they're just remodeling. Okay? And so that's all they need to do, and they're never going to hurt the tree to the fact that a native tree is going to die, because they've been all around with native trees. So at an angle, in green on the ground, squirrels. If it's brown and conical cut, it's a twig girdler. And
I had a squirrel remodel a limb right off a pin oak.
Good.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, Kyle, what is that?
Well, it's, I guess the other Kyle and I had coordinated shirts, and also just the fact we were going to bring sticks. So this is actually a bit of a cottonwood tree, and there's a few different things going on. So we've got these large knobs or kind of bumps on there, and that's actually a bacterial pathogen. So we're familiar with crown gall, causing a lot of diseases on many plants. Cottonwoods, aspens, and poplars, they get the same bacteria but as a limb gall, and that's what's going on with these large knobby bumps going on. But the cooler part of this is there's a whole bunch of orange little tendrils that are growing out of this branch, or out of this twig. And those orange tendrils are caused by Cytospora canker. And so Cytospora canker is one that we often talk about on spruce trees especially, but it also has a very broad host range. And since these knobs are all woody tissue, we are actually having the canker is developing on top of these knobs as well. And when we have periods of adequate moisture, these orange tendrils come out, they're full of spores, and then they'll be spread via rain and wind onto other wounds on the tree to kind of keep that whole cycle going. But that's also why cankers are so difficult to control, because we can't control the weather. We don't know when it's going to rain all the time. And so if we wanted to try to do some sort of fungicide control for these cankers, we would need to be applying a fungicide every time there's going to be moisture out to prevent these tendrils from expanding. And as such, with any sort of cankers, we always recommend instead just prune it out, go down about at least 8 inches down past where the canker is, so you have that healthy tissue, because again, chemical control for cankers just does not work. But you may sometimes get these really cool orange things that grow out of the branches too. So
You do like really strange things.
it's awesome, and they're kind of neon under the scope when you look at them up close. So.
All right, Jeff, pruning shears.
I brought my pruners. So now that the weather's improving all across the state, things are a little bit more comfortable. We're a little bit more likely to be out in our yard looking around for things to do. And this is not the ideal time to do a lot of heavy pruning. However, I always have my pruners with me. This is a really good time to find those areas that haven't done really well. Maybe you've had some branches on a shrub die back, a branch on a tree, maybe some disease in your perennials. So this is a great time to clean some of that stuff up. And again, I'm not talking about doing a lot of pruning, but if you got a dead branch here or there, this is a great time to do it. The leaves haven't come off yet, they haven't turned color yet, so you'll be able to find those locations real easy right now. So like I said, the weather's good, we have a long weekend, good time to get out in the yard, do a little light pruning.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, Kyle, you get the first round of picture questions. This first one comes to us from Hartington. It is beetles on rose blossoms, and they're green, but they're not Japanese beetles. They're smaller than that.
Yep, these are northern corn rootworms. So, corn rootworms, there's a few species, western, northern corn rootworms. They're well known as a pest in corn, but they also, late in the summer, they start dispersing away from those cornfields and will find their way to flowers, especially lighter colored flowers, and can cause some damage to those flowers. So unfortunately, you're really not going to want to spray anything on these because you're going to have the potential for off-target effects with pollinators too. So I would recommend just trying to tolerate it. And what you can do, if it's not too many, hand pick them, knock them off into a bucket of soapy water, that sort of thing. But otherwise, I wouldn't spray anything on the blossoms.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Your next one is also a rose question. This comes to us from Gretna, and these are nearly wilds and knockouts, about 7 years old. She's babysitting them for the official gardener, but what is this? Is this a bug or is this a fungus?
Definitely a bug, although has the potential for fungus there too. So these are aphids. You can see kind of the yellowish aphids on there. Can't see enough detail to have an idea which species. There's over 60 that will feed on roses, but the honeydew, that can support the growth of sooty mold as well. For these, insecticidal soaps work really well for aphids, so I would say that. If you're babysitting them, you don't want to invest that much time, spraying it with the hose will probably help, manage those numbers too.
All right, and your final one, Kyle, comes to us from western Otoe County. He knows it's not a Japanese beetle, but here's another green one. So what's this one?
This is a dogbane leaf beetle. So they feed on dogbanes. It's a native beetle, and they're really cool. So plants in this family, they have all these really nasty toxins, latex and cardiac glycosides. So they're actually able to sort of sequester some of that and use it as defense. So otherwise, not a beetle that's going to really be harmful in your landscape. They're just going to feed on dog bane.
All right, excellent. All right, Dennis.
Yes.
Bennington, Nebraska.
Okay.
What kind of snake is this first one?
This is a juvenile just hatched. So this is the most wonderful time of the year. All 29 of our snakes either are born live or hatch from August 15th to October 15th. So that's why it's the most wonderful time of the year. And this is a hatchling black rat snake. It will change from this marble-looking pattern to a solid pattern by the time it's 2 to 3 years old. We have several snakes that the juvenile looks nothing like the adult, and this is one of them. They're a rodent feeder. They are semi-arboreal. They live in trees sometimes in the spring, and they're just one of those great ones to have around. And they'll grow from this small little 5 inches of a hatchling to about 6 foot when they're full grown at about 5 to 8 years old.
We're all looking up in the tree just in case.
No such luck here.
Right. Your next one is also what kind of snake is this? This comes to us from Lincoln. She found this in her garage.
Yeah, that's a bull snake. It looks like a good size one. And they're our most common snake in the whole state, found in all 93 counties. Grow to be our largest by over 2 foot. They will grow up to 8.5 foot. And they're rodent feeders, carry no germs and viruses. Their teeth are less than 1/8 of an inch. So they're just great to have. And it looks like it wants to get into the house from the garage. It's right by the door there. Some people have all the luck. But yeah, it's a great thing to have. So it's a bull snake.
All right. Your next 2 pictures are from Papillion. Maddening. They have a large fenced yard, no pets. They're very well versed in all of their animal visitors, turkeys, everything else, but something continues to poo in their yard. And
well, the way this is 3 different pieces of defecation, the first 2 next to each other of different ages, and the way it's shaped, it looks very much like a domesticated cat. It's definitely feline. It could be opossum, but looking at this scat, I'm going to go with a cat, a neighborhood cat.
All right, who could climb the fence, of course. So there you go. All right, your final one, Dennis, comes to us from southern Johnson County. And I know you're not an ornithologist, but he thinks this is
It's an avian reptile, otherwise called a bird. It's a flycatcher. Exactly which flycatcher, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, the photo is very, very blurred, so right. I have a little bit of trouble there.
All we could see was the color, which was beautiful.
I kind of go by the color, but right. I don't know exactly what species.
All right.
But it's a flycatcher. It's a good bird. It's a native bird.
All right, excellent. All right, other Kyle.
Yep.
This comes to us from Ainsworth. You have 2 pictures. It's her Valiant grapevine planted in 2021 on the east side of the house. Each year she prunes it back to 20 feet of base vine. Is this a rot in a spot on that vine, or does this belong somewhere else?
Really, I think that this is a nutritional issue. And so there's we see a lot of iron chlorosis occurring on a lot of trees. Typically with iron chlorosis, we'll have the yellowing occurring between the veins, but those leaf veins still remain bright green, and often we'll see it across the entire plant. And from looking at this grapevine, it seems like pretty much every leaf is affected, and so I'm going to guess that it is iron chlorosis. Out in Ainsworth, western Nebraska, they do have some issues with some alkaline soils. And so iron chlorosis isn't so much a deficiency of iron in the soil, but normally it's a pH issue. And so once we have soil pHs above about 7.2, iron becomes very limiting in there. And so what you want to do is if you can drop that soil pH by adding sulfur, or maybe even some evergreen pine needles around there to drop that soil pH to get it closer to 6.5 into 7, to where that iron will become much more available, and then that issue should go away.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Your next one comes to us from Grand Island and could come to us from anywhere.
Yes.
This is a hackberry. She has two planted in the same area. One is fine, the other one looks like this.
Yeah, so this is likely a virus, and so island chlorosis of hackberry. So I previously talked about iron chlorosis. This is island chlorosis. Island chlorosis, and it's called that because we just have some yellow islands in an otherwise sea of green. This is a relatively recently described virus, only within maybe the past 10 years or so has it actually been described, but it's not harmful at all. Doesn't appear to harm the hackberries in any way. It just gives the leaves a little bit of different variegation.
All right, and you have 3 pictures for this last one. This is a Lincoln viewer. It's a young northern catalpa. Leaves are getting lighter spots on them, then they turn brown, then they die, starts on the lower leaves and works its way up.
And I think that this is iron chlorosis again. And so we have where the veins are still remaining nice and green, and that chlorosis in between. Often we will see different nutrient deficiencies occurring at different parts of the plant first, depending on how mobile those nutrients are. The other thing, anytime you have a brand new planting, those roots are going to struggle, and they're not going to be fully established. And so I really don't do a whole lot. I don't worry a whole lot about trees, freshly planted trees, until they're a couple of years old. Give them time for those roots to establish, to actually grow a little bit, until they can start absorbing the nutrients and water that they're meant to.
No smacking him on television.
Yeah, I tell you.
All right.
I don't worry about trees.
Jeff, your first 3 pictures are actually about trees.
Okay.
Volunteer oaks, little bunches of weird leaves, and they're on oaks about 7 feet tall. So what do we
That's a very interesting. So these are a bur oak, it looks like, and they have a variety of leaves are growing up and down the stems that do not match the rest of the plant. And looking at that, so to me, it's telling me there's some sort of injury that may have caused this. So whether it's an insect or herbicide or a virus that may be causing it. Now, the fact that all of these plants in close proximity to each other are suffering from this, right? So then I started thinking, I hate to blame it on a herbicide or some sort of treatment, but I wonder, it just seems too coincidental that they would all have it.
All right.
So it's interesting. I'd be curious to see. I'd like to hear from them next spring if it leaves out again like this.
All right.
And then I think a sample would be worth seeing.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Your next 2 pictures come to us from Omaha. This is a maple that seems to turn fall color and drop leaves early every year. He does have a tree service that fertilizes every year, and he also says the canopy seems thin. Looks like a sugar maple, maybe.
Okay. So sometimes with maples in particular, they will tend to go dormant a little early. I've had some sugar maples that turn their colors as we get into August and lose their leaves by the time we're into September. Others will hold for a lot longer time. And I think there's a couple things that could be going on. My first thought is, based on the size and the age of it, and the fact that it's fully leafed out and is starting to decline, is that it's probably not a disease. I'm thinking it's probably a stem girdling root that is slowly kind of strangling the tree, and it becomes more stressful as we get later into the year. And as a way to protect itself, it shuts things down. We've just gone through a long warm period here, and even though we've had those periodic rains that have been nice, although it's 2 inches in 10 minutes, but I think that's probably what we're looking at. And if it continues this way, I would think that over time we'll start seeing the tree decline. We'll see some more dead in it, and that's what I would look for next year. They could pull the mulch back and kind of see if many times those roots will be visible on top. You'll see a root coming around the base of the trunk, and that's a real good indication that we might be having something like that. It's very common in maples. So.
All right, and your last 2 are also a maple. This is in the Millard area. Few of the leaves are looking like this, and it's a new maple planted last fall.
Yeah, it's another sugar maple. It has a little bit of aphids on it, but nothing that I think is a real serious problem.
Right.
And again, it's a young tree. I'd double check and make sure that the depth of planting is good. So again, pull the mulch back, make sure that we haven't put it in too deep. If it was a potted plant, Again, that would be my other concern, is making sure that you get in there, since it's fairly young, you may be able to incorporate some better topsoil, maybe some compost around the tree. Make sure that you have a nice wide mulch bed, and that we don't bury the stem too much going into fall. But otherwise, I don't think that it's real serious at this point. I think it's probably, again, we've gone through a long hot period. Sugar maples aren't necessarily inclined to enjoying 100-degree days, so.
All right, as are people.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, you know, hydrangeas have become an extremely popular plant in the landscape. We're going to hear now from Mark Canny about a few of those varieties and how to use them.
Today we're looking at hydrangea in the landscape. And if you look to my right here, you can see a smaller version of what is the Annabelle. It's called the peewee white. And it's used at this location because of the height. It stays under 3 feet. Behind the peewee white hydrangea, we have the what is called confetti. And it is a tardiva hydrangea. And as you can tell by the flower, it is not the round ball, it's more of a conical shape. And as moving further back, you can see in the far background, there's limelight hydrangea. And limelight hydrangea at this location is used to really create a wall between this property and the neighbor's property. And taking a cue from the plant material around it, you have the concolor fir, and then you have the hostas. And pulling in the blues and the greens from those really ties in the landscape nicely. On a management level, the way you treat hydrangeas can greatly affect the types of flowers or the size of the flowers that are produced. Behind me, you'll see limelight hydrangea, and on the right, you'll notice the balls are much more compact. There's a lot more of them. Those shrubs were not cut back as part of the management plan. They were not cut back. And then if you look to the right of the concolor fir, you'll notice much larger heads. Same shrub, limelight, but because it was cut back, it allowed the shrub to regenerate and create larger flowers. Oftentimes, hydrangeas are thought of as our grandmother's shrubs, and I like to think of them, or think that there's nothing wrong with that, but I think I like to look at how we can reuse them in the landscape and make them a little more modern. So if you look at this particular planting at the side of the house, you'll notice the limelight hydrangeas create the backdrop, but then we've integrated native plants, including Radon's favorite aster in the front, which we'll put on a spectacular display this fall. And then we incorporated a blonde ambition grass here to add some texture and color. And if you notice, the seed head of the grass picks up the flower head of the hydrangea. Oftentimes, I think hydrangeas are thought of as being high maintenance and require a lot of work in the landscape. Next to me is an example of one of the simplest and hardiest hydrangeas, and it's called Incrediball. The reason it's called Incrediball is because of the large flowered heads it gets. It blooms early in the season, usually May, and if you time it carefully, you can have hydrangeas blooming from spring all the way into the fall. So there are 7 different species of hydrangea, and I have some of those here that I thought I would talk about with you. The ones people love the most are always the pink, of course, and the blue. And I learned from my mother to really use these as annuals and use them in pots. And that way you can kind of control the content to get them blue or pink. This one on my right is this Macrophylla serrata. You notice the difference in the petals, and this one is just a straight Macrophylla. Moving on, we get into some of the ones that are easier to grow. The paniculatas, which include the limelight. This happens to be a bobo. This one also in the paniculata family is one of my favorites, Little Lamb. One of the oldest is the arborescens, which falls into the Annabelle and the peewee white, and of course the Incrediball. And lastly is another one of the paniculatas that I think is really interesting just because of the way it's cut up, and this one is called Lava Lamp. Keep in mind when you're looking for hydrangeas that there's a variety of those out there that require different kinds of maintenance and care. You know, the tried and trues are always going to be the arborescens and the paniculatas. They aren't the fancy blue and the pink, but they are tried and true bloomers and will always bring happiness and put a smile on your face in the garden.
Mark loves hydrangeas, and we have a really nice collection on campus, all sorts of them, so you can take a peek and see what you'd like. All right, Kyle, this is a beautiful butterfly in a flower garden near Swedberg. For your first question, which one is this?
This is a tiger swallowtail. It's a female. You can tell by kind of the shading, the blue shading in that hind wing, but it's a tiger swallowtail.
Perfect. Then we have also Western Odo County. Found these two bugs on the milkweed. He doesn't think they're milkweed bugs. What are they?
Yeah, correct. They're stink bugs. This is a twice-stabbed, or two twice-stabbed stink bugs. They get that name from the two red spots on their body. They're common on a variety of different plants in the dogbane family, including milkweeds. Feed on seeds, but otherwise not really a problem.
All right. Your next one is hanging out on a hibiscus bush. She thinks this is a grasshopper. It was 4 inches long.
Yeah, it's a grasshopper, and they are big ones. This is an obscure birdwing grasshopper. It's definitely one of our largest species, and it's actually related. It's just a circa obscura. It's related to those the migratory locusts that we have in Africa that cause great plagues. Fortunately, our species here aren't really ever abundant enough to cause that sort of damage.
All right, and your final one isn't so much fun. This is ants invading a second-story bedroom, and she's wondering if she should be concerned and how to get rid of them.
Yeah, I would be concerned on this one. Definitely looks like a carpenter ant. Where they're found, seeing them regularly, that's concerning. So, some things you can do. Carpenter ants, they forage at night. So, doing some investigation after it's dark, going out, looking around with a flashlight, see if you can find those trails, locate where they're maybe entering the house. Just because you have them inside, it doesn't mean there's a colony inside the house. So, you might be able to plug up those spots if you can locate where they're coming in. But beyond that, treatment really does entail treating both satellite colonies and the main colony. So when we get them inside, a colony inside, it's a satellite colony. You have to get both, and it is kind of tricky. So I would recommend, working with a professional pest management company for these, because they're just hard to get on, on your own.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Dennis, this is a Burwell viewer. Has holes in the tree and big holes in the yard under the tree. So he thinks the holes in sawdust are carpenter ants, but what are all the holes in the soil beneath the tree?
Okay, so there's two things here. The holes in the tree, the small round ones that are perfectly round, are probably some boar exiting, and it looks like this part of the tree is dead. Now the hole at the base of the tree is probably something like a skunk or an opossum digging in that dead bark to get the grubs as food. Now these holes under the tree are not from a vertebrate animal. They're either from a spider, and they don't look like from a cicada wasp, definitely don't. So it could be a spider, or it could be even a cicada emerging. So maybe Kyle can weigh in a little on these holes, but they're definitely not a vertebrate pest. These are either an arachnid or insecta emergence out of the ground.
Yeah, I wondered maybe about like a native bee too, or something. I'm not sure. I wish I knew the size of these holes a little better, had some scale.
We'll do some
They look about
with
quarter inch to me, looking at the grass. So.
All right, your next two, Dennis, come to us from Omaha. This is another. What is digging? Or I'm sorry, this is Columbus. A deer has done this damage. Now it looks like this. How to keep that from happening again, and is this a goner?
So well, I don't know if it's a goner or not. I would say a lot of it's gone, so it probably is. But it looks like a young deer came along and is just, previous year was trying to get the velvet off its antlers. To take care of this, you need to get like drain tile and split it. Make sure there's a space, maybe an inch space, so you're not girdling the tree, and just put that black drain tile, it's very inexpensive, all the ways up to about 5 foot, up to the first branches, and then the deer can't hurt the tree.
All right, and your final two are from Omaha. What is digging into the base of the maple? They thought maybe it was a rodent looking for insects.
No, well, if you want to call it an opossum, or it's bigger than a small rodent. So this again would be something like a skunk or an opossum digging into that dead material looking for grubs for food. In the holes above that are again something, maybe a bird, because these are irregular shaped, trying to get those grubs out of this dead bark.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Kyle, Hallam, Nebraska, why is this evergreen shrub turning brown and looking like it's dying? And we've got a couple pictures.
Yeah, this one is a little bit difficult. We have almost looks like entire branches that are dying. We're not seeing needles dying at the new needles. Both new needles and older growth are showing that brown discoloration, which makes me think about some sort of root issue. I think that they had mentioned that it gets watered fairly regularly, so I would wonder about maybe even overwatering could be a potential issue. But I think that there's some sort of root issue going on, likely a moisture problem, and so I would try to regulate the moisture a little bit better on that.
All right, your next two come to us from Guide Rock, and this is also a pine, and this is, they've used a fungicide and an insecticide and soaked this one, but nothing helps.
So yeah, this one, it looks like we have the entire branches that are kind of dying on this one. Whenever we have a pine tree and we have entire branches that are dying rather suddenly, we always want to be concerned about pine wilt nematode. Not the most common on white pines, but things can happen. So I would recommend testing. The dead branches, they're dead. They're not going to turn green again, so you can prune those out. And maybe send a sample into the plant diagnostic clinic for testing for pine wilt nematode. The other thing I would wonder about would be some sort of canker further back along those branches that's causing the death.
All right, and your final two are from Omaha, arborvitae. They keep turning brown, plenty of water, doesn't see any black stuff. Is this simply environmental? They're 18 years old.
Yep, this is most likely environmental as well. Arborvitae tend not to like wet feet a whole lot, and so if they are getting overwatered, that can occur. The one picture where we see the entire death of that tree really points to some sort of root or crown issue. Again, most likely that's going to be environmental.
All right. Jeff, your first one is an Evoca viewer who wants to know, why don't these hydrangeas bloom all the way? Two pictures.
Well, a hydrangea flower in particular, and that looks like a paniculata. So they have two different types. So it's an inflorescence made up of different kinds of flowers. Mm-hmm. And so we have a fertile flower and an infertile flower. And it's a young plant. Over time, I think it'll fill in, but you'll always have that. If you look at any hydrangea flower and kind of peel back the bright, colorful part, you'll see that there's other little flowers underneath. So.
All right. Your next two are a viewer who bought a white pine that was pruned like a Christmas tree, and now it's doing this, and they wonder if there's any way it'll ever turn into a real tree.
Well, over time, and I think young white pine are not a super attractive tree if you're going to the nursery, and nurseries many times will tend to try to shape these trees so that they're a little bit more attractive and a little fuller. And so what you have is now that the new growth has come back up, and so it's looking more like it should. What you could do, and now isn't a bad time to go in and do some light pruning just to shape it a little bit at the top. I wouldn't get carried away. And then also with the bottom half, look at thinning that a little bit so it's not quite so full. And then doing that annually and allowing it to start to kind of even out over time. But it'll be a little bit of a project, but it looks like a healthy tree, so I think you'll be fine.
All right. Your next one is southwest of Fairbury. It's a burning bush that obviously burned, and she's wondering if it's worth saving or not.
Yeah, so it's a burning bush that's had significant dieback. And,
right.
At this point, obviously right now I'd go in, and if you want to try to keep it, cut all the dead out of it. And then see what you get for the next year. Euonymus have very fibrous roots, so again, they will suffer from being too wet, like Kyle was talking about, to being too dry all in the same week. So you have to watch that. They can suffer from things like scale, and then rabbits in particular like to really attack Euonymus. So they can be hit from a lot of different angles.
All
so you
right.
can try to save it, but maybe not.
All right, and your final one is Grand in western Nebraska.
Okay.
Old neighborhood, many trees. She wants to plant hostas. She's done some digging. She's found all these roots. What do you want to say?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think I would avoid probably working underneath the root system of a tree. Tree's more valuable. You could mulch it. You could try some ground covers. So, and then they will slowly kind of fill in. That might be your best bet, and they'll tolerate the varying conditions of a shade tree.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Well, we need to take a short break. Stay with us. Coming right up after this, we have the plants of the week and, of course, more of your great questions. Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. Coming up later in the program, you're going to see our annual time lapse of the garden. Right now, it is time for those plants of the week.
So the plants of the week, so Kim was nice to me. She brought some things I like. So we have some shrubs and a small tree. So these all are fruits. So the nice thing here is it gives you the kind of that full season in the garden. So we have plants that have good flower, good fall color, and then they also produce these fruits as well. So the one in front here you see with the white fruit is a gray dogwood. And again, it can get kind of big, can't create a colony, but flower's nice, pollinators like it, produces some good fruit that make it interesting. This unusual thing here is a bladdernut. So, and it's kind of a small tree, maybe 12, 15 feet tall, Kim. Is that about the size of yours? Again, puts on these kind of these lantern sort of flowers that are very interesting and fun to have. And then the last one is the purple fruit is the arrowwood viburnum. I'm guessing this is blue muffin. So a very popular viburnum. It's not muffin size, as we've been fooled here on campus. It can be quite big, but it is very pretty and produces these blueberry, that's the blue part, flowers. And then again, arrowwood has spectacular fall color, so it's a really an all-season plant.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, Kyle, we have your first one coming to us from Vermilion, South Dakota. They've never seen one of these before, did some search. They think this belongs to a hawk moth. Are they right?
Yep, it's a hornworm caterpillar. It's a spurge caterpillar for a spurge hawk moth. And so interestingly, these are introduced. The larvae feed on leafy spurge, so they're introduced from Europe in I think the 60s to help control that.
Excellent. All right, your next two pictures are way cool. Found this on a tomato plant. She says it looks like paper wasp cocoons that have decimated a caterpillar.
Yeah, not paper wasp, but close. So this is a tobacco hornworm. So they're a pest of solanaceous crops, and all of these little white structures, those are the cocoons for braconid parasitoid wasps. So they lay their eggs inside. They feed inside that caterpillar, and then when they're ready to pupate, they make those little cells on the surface, and then they'll hatch from that. So if you see that in your garden, that's a hornworm you don't want to kill. You want those biocontrol around.
All right. Your next one comes to us from Otoe County. Oh gosh, what is that?
That's a male Chinese mantis. Yeah. So that's our introduced species.
Still a mantis. And finally, you have not a question, but this viewer from Omaha wanted us to know that her ladybugs were doing a fabulous job clearing off the aphids. So can people buy ladybugs and keep them put, or is that doesn't work?
You can actually buy ladybugs. You can't really control where they are,
right?
But you can, and yeah, absolutely. I think the great thing is ladybugs. They are so good at controlling aphids, so you don't always have to treat things. They'll do a really good job of their own. But a lot of times when you treat with an insecticide, you're sort of it's detrimental to those natural enemies. So sometimes it's best to just let them do their thing.
Perfect. Thanks, Kyle. All right, Carney, Dennis, what critter might be digging holes in the yard? They're 7 to 8 inches in diameter. The hole or the tunnel goes down a few inches and then turns and goes horizontal.
Yeah. So if it's in a bank, which it looks like it is partly in a bank, I would say woodchuck or groundhog, same animal, especially if it's been there a while. If it just appeared and it seems to go away, it could be a badger with a round head. Usually badger is a little more oblong, but it's definitely a big animal such as a woodchuck or a badger.
All right, trail cam. All right, your next one comes to us from around Jeffrey Lake. It said these holes appeared in a steep bank that was planted with grasses and wildflowers. They appear to go horizontal underground, but they're not very deep.
Right. So they're open holes, but they're only open because of the rain. So these are moles, eastern moles. And what's happening, their runs, because of the rain, have broken open and you have their open holes. So you need to do some mole control. A nice bull snake does a great job in cleaning up the moles.
All right.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. All right, your final one comes to us from Wahoo, lives in a wet residential neighborhood. What is burrowing in the window well?
This is not a pest. This is an insect. This is a cicada wasp.
All right, excellent. So there you go. We share. Cheers.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, Kyle, other Kyle again, Fremont, Nebraska. This tree has more dead branches this year. It's a pear. It's a flowering pear. And reddish brown spots on the leaves. So I think we have a couple more pictures. We got that one, and then we got the leaves themselves.
Yep.
They
And
want to
that
treat
is-
it.
That is our good friend pear rust.
Right.
So caused by a few different types of different gymnosporangium rusts. But those rusts they overwinter on junipers or on cedar trees. In the spring, we'll see those orange globs on the junipers. And then those spores will blow onto the pears. And our flowering pears are especially susceptible to it. As far as control goes, right now, there's literally nothing that you can do for it. You're really just wasting money on any sort of fungicidal control. And so you want to base your control in the spring. And so we want to typically we want to start that spray program right as those blossoms are beginning to open and those leaves are coming out of the buds. And then every about 10 to 14 days, you'll need to repeat that fungicide application. Now, if you're not seeing major defoliation year after year after year, I would not recommend any sort of fungicidal control. Really just let the tree be. But if we're seeing more than 50% defoliation in consecutive years, that's when you want to start thinking about doing some sort of fungicide.
All right, thanks, Kyle. So let's see, your next picture here, an issue with fungus among us on the smoke bush. Mm-hmm. And it's getting water, but the leaves are dying from the ground up. So what do we think? Verticillium or?
Yeah, with the and then also on one of those leaves on the smoke bush as well, we can see that there's kind of some burning around the edges, which is very common with verticillium. Verticillium's a tough one to control. Fungicides don't really do anything for it. The best control measures are trying to increase overall plant health, as a lot of plants can sustain low levels of verticillium infection. But you want to be pruning out those dead branches, and eventually you'll want to start thinking about a replacement plant for that area. There are a lot of good plants that are resistant to verticillium, such as hickory, or there's quite a few others that you could plant there instead.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Okay, Jeff, we're starting with pagoda dogwood tree.
Okay.
With you. You have 2 pictures of this one. She did send a lot of pictures, which was great. Planted fall of 2020, southeast side of the house, gets shade half the day, squirrels chewed on it, sucker at the ground, but very few green leaves. She's wondering, is there any hope on this plant?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think she sited the plant well, so I don't think it's a bad spot. It looks like it has some canker. There's a pagoda dogwood declines that happens with pagoda dogwood. It seems like our experience here on campus is they can do very well in certain places, and other places they go through a cycle of about 7 to 8 years and then slowly fade away. So it's, I guess it's one of those that I love the tree, but I'm not surprised by this, and she's ready for something else there.
All right, your next 2 are of 4. This viewer has birch trees in 4 different lawns, so this is the bookends. One tree looks this sclerotic, and then one looks this perfect. What's going on? And this is
Kyle and I, we're like doing the same thing here. So
I know.
Yeah. So this is iron chlorosis, and river birch in particular prefers soils that have a pH of 6.5, as Kyle was talking earlier, a little lower pH to help with some of this. And my guess is these soils are obviously higher than that. The fact that the one person who sent it in said he has used chelated iron around his tree every year and added that may be helping to keep his greener than the others. But I think the fact is that as much as I love river birch, it isn't really compatible with all our soils in Nebraska. The folks that are lucky enough to have a good one, that's great, but the rest of us probably will suffer with chlorotic ones. So.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, you know, it's been a wonderful season in the Backyard Farmer Garden with everything from our produce donations to our All-America selections. It's always fun to show you exactly what happened from start to finish. So as you can see, every day is a great day in the Backyard Farmer Garden all season. All right, Kyle, your next two are bees, wasps, or hornets in the lilac. This is an elkhorn. She's wondering what is all over the lilac. They seem to be making holes, peeling off the bark. What is this going on here?
Yeah, this one's actually, I'm not entirely sure what's happening. So it looks like there's eastern yellow jackets there. We have a cicada killer there. So they're kind of centered around this hole. I'm really wondering if this is injury in that there's an injury there with some sap, and they're coming to basically feed on that sap. That would be my best guess. But yeah, I would like to know more about what's maybe inside of there.
All right, don't stick your hand in there.
No.
This is a Western Otoe County viewer. These guys were showing up in a loose soil area. They swarm. What are those?
This is a two-spotted scaleid wasp, and these are parasites of grubs. In particular, this species, they parasitize both Catinus, so that's like the green June beetle, as well as Japanese beetles. So these are really good guys to have around. If you're seeing them, leave them alone and let them help control some of those grubs.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. All right, Dennis. Pine trees in the yard. They keep finding tips of the branches on the ground underneath. This is Buffalo County. They think it's squirrels. Is there anything they can do to prevent this?
Yep, it's squirrels. They're trimming the tree. They don't want to wait till Christmas to trim the tree, and they're just trimming the tufts off, and they're probably making a nest with it.
And not a thing they can do.
Not a thing they should do.
All right, excellent. Then we have an Omaha viewer who wants to know what is tasting the eggplant.
Yeah, again, those teeth marks look like it's a squirrel. They're a bit bigger for a vole, and squirrels are just, I don't know, they seem like they're just tasting it and deciding this is not a nut, and going on. So,
Or they just don't like eggplant.
yeah, not
right.
Italian squirrels. I don't know.
All right, your final one here. A viewer has sent us a picture of a decimated plant in a pot, and she wonders, don't deer eat the whole plant? A lot was just
Yeah,
left on the ground.
This is not deer. Actually, this looks like my 2-year-old granddaughter got in there. So it really does. That's what she would do. It could be a squirrel or a rabbit getting into the pot and just milling around looking for something to eat. But a deer, it's not deer. It's likely more something, you know, if there wasn't a catnip in there, it could be a domesticated cat. But I would say squirrel.
All right, darn squirrels, they're just after everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, this is a viewer from Omaha with a big pin oak. You have 3 pictures on this one. She's wondering if this has wetwood. And of course, she's got a lot of those dead leaves also, but then she's got this going on. She's wondering, is it wetwood? And if so, will it cause the rotting? Will it kill it? Any suggestions?
Yeah, this certainly does look like either bacterial wetwood or slime flux. Slime flux is caused by yeasts, whereas bacterial wetwood is caused by a few different types of bacteria. Neither of them are detrimental to the overall health of the tree. In fact, some newer research is showing that they often will have maybe some antifungal components as well. So really nothing to do about slime flux. It may indicate that there is another issue going on with the tree. So I would keep an eye on it. The one thing that is a little bit concerning is anytime we do have softer pockets around the trunk at the base of the tree, that can be a site for another fungal infection. So you'd want to watch the tree for other signs of decline, but in general, it should be fine.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Your next one is an acreage south of Lincoln. Large blue spruce dying from the top down.
Botria diplodia canker. You can top it, and I've heard you should maybe just plant a globe spruce next to it, and so you have a couple of beautiful trees next to each other.
Cute, and she is wondering if all the rest of them 40 feet away are at risk.
They are, but they could be just fine as well.
All right, thank you, Kyle. All right, Jeff, this is a viewer from Waverly, and this particular viewer bought a house there. They found some overgrown stuff in the yard. They found this plant. It created a rash. They're wondering, is this poison ivy?
It's not poison ivy, so we can relax. It is pokeweed, which is also poisonous. And for some folks, so all parts of the plant is poisonous. You want to get rid of it. It's a perennial, so you may have to dig up. It'll have kind of a taproot, but you want to get rid of it because it will spread and you will have pokeweed everywhere. So not anything you want to keep.
All right,
And I like to add as detrimental to dogs if a dog eats those berries.
Yeah,
So
right, yeah. All parts of the
if you have
plant
any
are
pets,
poisonous.
get rid of it.
Yeah.
All right, your next two, Jeff, real quickly, are what is this?
So this is elderberry.
Right.
So which is a good one. It's important to remember too with elderberry, which maybe folks don't, you don't want to eat the fruit raw. So it's one of those that you're going to want to cook the fruit before consuming it. So, but again, great plant to have, fun to have.
All right, excellent. Well, and we have a couple of announcements of things going on in the gardening world, and I believe we're going to start with Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer on Facebook, Thursdays at 8 p.m. And we will be talking about nutritional value in the produce that we eat. Then we also, I do believe, have still our Backyard Farmer Grow a Row produce donations from now through September 28th. 4:30 to 7:30, we are pushing almost 1,000 pounds total, which is just fabulous. And we have the Nebraska Local Food Challenge coming up from now through September 30th. SustainableNebraska.org for the Local Food Challenge. So lots of good things with food. Unfortunately, that is also all the time we have for Backyard Farmer tonight. I need to throw a wide web of thank you, of course, to our audience, our loyal audience and viewers, everybody who sent us questions and emails all year long, the panel, of course. We could not do this without our partners from NPM and our producers. We certainly could not do this without our master gardeners. So we want to say thank you for everything you've done. Look forward to a great season and winter. Good night, good gardening. We'll see you all next year on Backyard Farmer.